Welcome to another edition of Truth Seekers with me, Coach Nick, and Coach Josh. Today we are joined by Erin. Hey, Erin, how you doing?
I'm
Welcome.
doing good. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, pleasure. We'll dive straight in as always. Today's subject is planning. Planning. We moved around and thinking about this a little bit and just kind of see where it goes as always. Like, how do people think about planning? Like, is there some inherent understanding that it's necessary? Uh, I feel like that's true, but I also feel like there's a lot of resistance to planning.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't take the time to actually do it. Or then you also have the people that are very type A and try to plan out like every minute of their life. But yeah, I do feel like most people probably know that they should, but then actually don't do it. Or maybe they make a plan like in January because it's the beginning of a new year and then just kind of forget about it a couple of weeks later and never go back to it.
That's right. But it's like interesting what you said though. It's like either like they know that they should, but they don't, or they're type A and they can't stop.
Right.
Right? It's
Yeah.
interesting, right? Because we tend to think like that in that binary way, right? It's like you either all in or you don't do it at all. Like, is
Right.
that like? Is it? I wonder if that's really the case. Like, that's interesting, right? That perception, but it really rings true for me.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I've definitely met people like that have this idea of where they want to go, but then they have, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. And then working in HR, like you can have a plan, but the company might have a different plan, or they might go under, or they might do big restructuring. So I think it's important to have an overall plan, but then also be flexible on how you get there. Because you never know what opportunities are going to come up. And if you're just so laser focused on a specific way that it has to be, you might miss an opportunity to get there faster or get there in a different way that makes more sense for you.
I love that. That's one of our terms. 100% scripted,
Yeah.
100% flexible.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always love the beginning of our topics too, because we got to frame it in a way. And like you said, you identified like not planning and then like over planning. So it's somewhere in the middle where there's that healthy balance.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, so what is the purpose of planning? And that might be obvious, but like when you go to plan your whatever day, week, month, year, what
hmm
are you trying to accomplish with that, Aaron?
Yeah, I think for me, like I always have like a big goal that I'm working towards. But then the planning is more so, okay, well, what am I going to do right now to help me get to the next step? And if you have a plan, then you're being more intentional with your actions, instead of just letting life happen to you and kind of being at the whim of everyone else. If you have a plan, then you can go forward on what's best for you and really make it so that you're doing things that you prioritize versus what other people are prioritizing.
Then it's easier to live in that space of like being able to roll with it, like having a general idea of where you want to go, but still being open to other opportunities as they come in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can, like, anytime you're getting a new opportunity, you can just kind of check in and make sure that it aligns with your overall goal. Or, sometimes you might have an amazing opportunity that makes you rethink your long-term goal, because you can do that too.
Hmm. Go ahead, coach. I think there's just something to getting started, right? And just having a way to frame the actions that you do take. And like you said, just being open to maybe a new or a better long-term goal that
Yeah,
maybe your actions were already pushing you in that direction, but now it's even more clear after having taken action.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And definitely taking action, I think, is one of the big things that people don't do, because similar to those type A people, they might spend hours coming up with a plan and then never taking the first step to actually doing anything. I think a lot of people are like that, especially with like their goals and like their big dreams.
Yeah, or sort of taking little snippets of action all the time. So like, I'm always doing stuff. What are you talking about? I'm always going. I'm always going. But there's no
Right.
defined outcome that they're trying to get, and so they're just all over the place, right? It's like
Right.
again, 100% flexible, 100% scripted. And to use a Tony Robbins quote as well, it's like you've got to be committed to your outcome, but flexible in your approach.
Right.
and think about it when it comes to like making decisions. It's so easy to get pulled together and confused and overwhelmed
Hmm.
about opportunities that come up.
Right.
How do you decide which one's the best when you don't know where you're going? Like,
Yeah.
so the planning itself is important, not just for the planning itself, but to give you some focus and direction about where you're going. Otherwise, you're just constantly going around in circles. Like, okay, I've got an opportunity here, opportunity there, opportunity there.
Right.
And if you haven't decided like where you want to end up, then you're just looking at the opportunities themselves. You're not looking at the bigger picture. So you end
Yeah.
up like all over the place, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I see that a lot of times with coaching clients where they feel like they kind of know what they want, but then when you actually start talking to them, they're like, oh, well, I'm going after this type of job, but actually I didn't really like that job. I'm like, okay, well, now's your time to change it. but but yeah, I think like a lot of people just don't realize that they have the power to drive their own life.
Right.
Which is why it's helpful when they do at least realize that they should talk to a coach. Then they can have someone kind of asking those questions that they're not asking themselves. But yeah, it's pretty funny. Like when when you're like, oh, we've been working together for a month. I didn't realize that you didn't want to actually do that.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because it's often I'll say this like multiple times. I'm like, well, that was your first goal. I didn't expect that you really wanted it. Like that's just we have to
Right.
get that one out of the way.
Yes.
But you now you've got like some semblance of where you really want to go, but
Yeah.
you couldn't have got there until you got the one out of the way.
Exactly.
Right. So
Yeah.
congratulations. That's great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic that you know that that's not the right goal.
Right.
Now you can work on the next one. That's so important, right? But you nailed something there, Aaron, which I find is the most important thing because I think from a coaching perspective, it's the inherent starting point of like the deep down rooted that anyone can have whatever it is that they want.
Right.
Possibilities are endless. As you said, you get to drive your own life,
Yeah.
and if that's not a frame that you're coming from, then no wonder, right?
Right.
No wonder there's a just merry-go-round of that tends to be frustrating for people that are successful. And what I mean by that is that they can see that there is something that they've got and they're able to get results,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not quite clear about how to do it on a repeated basis. Like they're just
Right.
accidentally successful almost.
Right.
And that's worse, right? Because
Yeah.
there's not a lot of pain there, or there's less pain there. As if you're completely unsuccessful, you've got nothing in your life you want. There's a lot of pain to drive you to get it and make those
Right.
steps. But if you're kind of in that middle ground where things are going okay, like I seem to be able to like live and it's all right. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of almost worse.
Yeah, exactly. Like just like settling for things
Yes,
that, maybe they're okay, but they could be a whole lot better. And I think a good amount of the population probably sits in that space, unfortunately.
I agree. What would you? So I'm really curious about this. Like, what is your approach into allowing someone to see that for themselves?
Yeah, I think for me, it's asking them a lot of probing questions, and I'm naturally more introverted, so I try to get them to talk. And it's really helpful for me because then, like, it's not just the words that they're saying. Like, you're picking up on, like, there will be things that they're really excited about talking about, and then there's other things where, like, you can just tell that they don't like it as much. So by getting them to really talk and me just kind of listening and paying attention, then I can tell them, like, you were so excited when you were telling me about this opportunity. And like you're comparing it to this other opportunity. But if you're asking me, I think you should do the one that you're super excited about. And I think sometimes people just feel like they need permission from someone to be able to say, like, okay, maybe it's not like the normal thing, or maybe it's not like if you just think about it intellectually, like it's maybe not the thing that's going to make you the most money or whatever it is, but they need someone to be able to like tell them, oh, it's okay for you to do this. Yeah.
Or just create the space for that to be okay. Like I think a
Yeah.
lot of people get caught up in maybe what others expect from them, or
Right.
what they expect their definition of success to be. And
Right.
like you say, when you coach people, when you have those conversations, you can feel genuine excitement, which is totally different than a different plan, right? You
Right.
just feel it. It's that that intuitiveness. Just and then you just reflect it back to them. This is what I'm hearing. Is this true? Is this really how you feel?
Right.
And then it makes it easier to sculpt a plan after that. And what I found when you have a plan is that it's easier to say no to certain things. Do you find that to be true, Erin?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you have something that you're striving towards and you know, okay, this is my ultimate goal, and then I've set this plan for what I'm working on right now to go forward, then when new opportunities come up, then yeah, you just say to yourself, okay, is this in alignment with where I'm headed? If it is, great. If it's not, then the answer is no. Or it doesn't even have to be no, it could be not right now,
Sure.
and maybe down the line if things change then you can always go back to it, um but yeah, I think it's very helpful to have like that intention and just making every action you have go towards that intention and that
Mm.
plan.
Coach, you said another trigger word for me, alignment. I love that word. What does that what does that mean in the scope of planning to you, Coach?
Yeah, it just makes it much easier though, right? It's like you're throwing a dartboard or an arrow at a bullseye. It's like anything else is just a distraction. It's
Mhm.
like, is that going to help they get there quicker? If not, then it's a distraction. It's like, that's easy. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Because it's you if you haven't got a plan, you haven't got the success. Like you don't know what it looks like to win. And maybe you don't even know what game you're playing or what game you want to play. So you want to set yourself up so you know what like good looks like, what the yes looks like. But also what's as much important as knowing what the yes looks like is knowing what the no looks like. So
Mm.
once you've defined what the yes is, it's like a violent yes, then everything else is a violent no.
Right.
It just makes it much easier. And when you can do that, all of that overwhelm just dissipates
Hmm.
because what you're doing is you're moving towards your best self, what you need.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like being able to say no, because you might have people that come to you and want you to do something that's helpful for them, but you have to be able to say no if it's not in line with where you're going. But if you do have that plan, you can just tell them, I'd love to help you and maybe we can do something down the road, but right now I have to, stick with what I'm planning to do. And then I feel like it's easier to be able to say no if you have that clear cut. And if you talk about it with people too, then they're going to know that you're laser focused on where you're going, and there's nothing wrong with saying no. We can feel like it sometimes, but it's very important to be able to kind of stick to your boundaries.
Yeah. And like, if you're not working your own plan, you're working someone else's plan,
Exactly.
even if you don't know it. But
Yeah.
you hit on something really cool there because like when you are aligned, everything that you're doing is focused into that, and so all you can see is more of that,
Right.
and other people see that in you as well.
Hmm.
So you attract what you want as well. Not only are you doing things that move towards that, you attract it because you're working on that level where people see that from you, and then more opportunities come up. It's like, oh, I know that you're doing this right now. I thought I'd introduce you to that person. Oh, thanks. That's fantastic. It's just like it's just going in one direction, and all of those things kind of settle around.
Yeah,
What did you scribble
exactly.
down there, Coach?
Just some notes here. I actually I want to have Erin react to the following statement. Wise words from very famous philosopher Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Have you heard that before?
I haven't, but that's so true.
So what would you say to somebody who has that outlook about planning? Like, well, even if I plan something, it's not going to go the way that I plan it.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what you guys were saying earlier with your, be flexible, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically like have the plan, but be flexible on how you get there. Because things are definitely going to come up that you're not going to plan for. There's going to be challenges and setbacks, but planning is just getting you to think about what you want, where you want to go, and then you're constantly assessing the plan, and it's fluid and it's going to change. But if you have that mindset, then for me, I just feel like you're never going to succeed in anything if you're just not even going to try. So
Well,
um,
yeah.
Yeah, so definitely just understand that those things are going to come up, but I also feel like having the plan, and especially having like your why, like why are you doing it, is really helpful when you do have the challenges and setbacks, because then you remember where you're going and where you're headed and why you're doing it. So yeah.
Mhm. I love that. Have your
Is
why.
there, yeah, is there an inherent resistance to creating plans, Erin, do you think?
I think it depends on the person. I think a lot of us are afraid of failure, and if you do plan, and you say that you're going to do certain things, and maybe you get into it and it doesn't work out exactly like you want, then that can be scary. So I do think that probably a lot of people don't want to actually have a plan, because then the next step is taking the action and doing it, and that's scary because it's changing and you're getting out of your comfort zone. um, but I think also, like, if you are one of the people that do plan and you take the actions, then you understand it's 100% probably not going to work out the way you have it thought out. Like, it will be a version of that, but you aren't going to know anything until you actually get in there and start doing it. And then once you get the experience, that's when you'll learn more about yourself, you'll grow. And like I said before, your initial plan might change, it might pivot a little bit, but if you don't ever take the action, then it's just like this daydream that's never going to happen.
What do you say to people that say, I need to have it 100% figured out and be certain before I do anything?
Yeah. I know a couple people like that. So, I think again, it's like it's a procrastination technique, and I think it plays into perfectionism, and that perfectionism comes from a fear of failure. So one of the things, because I used to have this, that's why I talk about it a lot, but one of the things that I started learning is I started reading books by people like Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins and all these people. Like, that's what they're saying. They're saying that you're going to fail. It just is what it is. So get over it and start taking the action, because it's not a failure if you learn from it. So that's definitely what I've had to learn over the years. And you're just not going to be able to have it all figured out. So I think you have a loose plan and you think through, like, where you're going, and have a couple of steps, and maybe you have a goal for your month or something, and
Yeah.
then for each week you kind of break it down, and then that way it's more scripted out on exactly what you're going to do, and maybe you can feel better about that. But then you still also have to be flexible, because things are going to happen, and depending on what you're doing, you're going to be dealing with factors outside yourself that you can't control, other people's schedules, COVID-19, like all kinds of stuff. Like, you're never going to be able to have it 100% mapped out, and the successful people don't.
Right, exactly. There's no thing, okay, when I've got it figured all out. That never happens, right? It's like
Right.
it's crazy. But thanks for sharing that, because I too am a recovering perfectionist.
Yes.
And but think about it, what perfection is like. If you want to have everything just right before you do it, it's like you can think about that as a high standard,
Hmm.
but not really, right? I think about it actually being a low standard, because you can never really get there. That's kind of what perfection is. It's like you
Right.
can define perfection in a box. You can say
Mhm.
this line here in this little box is perfection. But what that does is restricts you from creating new boxes and
Right.
creating new possibilities. So
Yeah.
you're limiting yourself by having perfection. So it's a low standard. But
Right.
it's a funny thing to think about. Yeah, it's like you've got to take on the mentality of either we win or we learn. And we don't know exactly where we're going, but we're never going to get there if we haven't got a plan. Or
Yeah.
worse,
Yeah.
you can get there and not even know it's where you want to be because you didn't define it in the first place. That sucks.
I think too, like, I think some people might be afraid that when they actually start taking the action, they'll learn that they don't like it, or it's not what they thought. And that happens, but you're never going to know if you actually like it or not until you actually try. So, your worldview might be shattered, but then you learn more about yourself and what you actually want to do. So it's always a win, anytime you can get that experience.
Absolutely. It really is like it's fascinating, right? It's like you can't lose.
Yeah.
There's no lose. There's no losing to take an action. Massive action is the cure all. So you
Mhm.
either figure out the best thing in your life, or you figure out something else that's even better that you didn't even know about. Now you
Right.
do. Now you
Yeah.
can keep going down that road, right? And you just keep exploring, create more, become more, be more, and that's all you have to do is just put one foot in front of the other. So I think like the most important thing about having a plan is having one. It
Right.
doesn't even matter what's in there, as long as you've got one. Then you're moving towards, you'll become more, right? Because just the process of going through it and taking action,
Yeah.
focusing on what you can control, that brings happiness in itself,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is. And I love what you said about like, what can you do over a month, right? Because
Yeah.
oftentimes it's starting to break through that mindset, create a new mindset for that person to go back to that point, to have them see that they really can do anything that they want. So how
Right.
do we start to build some momentum, bro? Because you've got to meet people where they are, and so suddenly asking someone what's their most wonderful, extravagant dreams, and what does that look like in a year's time? That can be a big stretch for a lot of people,
Right.
and not because they can't do it. It's just because they haven't experienced it before, and so they haven't built the muscle to understand what it's like. Everyone can; it's within everyone. But absolutely to your point, let's just start with something like, what can you prove to yourself that you could do over the next month? Let's just see.
Yeah.
Have some fun with it. What do you think you might
Yeah.
be able to create?
Absolutely. And I think those people that I really resonate with are the ones that are the recovering perfectionists, because then I think it's really good to start with something like really, really small, like just to, like you said, like build that confidence. And
Mhm.
then, okay, you did that for 2 weeks, you've built that habit. Now let's add on what's something else you can do. And then you're slowly adding on. So you're not really realizing how you're starting to build it up, and it's going to turn into the massive action, but you're not overwhelming yourself at the beginning with all of these things that you have to do.
Yeah, so something that's come up for me like 19 times today already, like, is an extension. And Coach Me, you talked about this earlier, right? There are no things that are big. It's only small things.
Right.
It's just a repeatable process of doing the small things. And depending on your perspective, so your context, your contrast, and your scale, is when you see the big thing or not, right? So if you're just sitting down and you've got a big area which no one can see, except for one door which is kind of out of the way, and you're just laying bricks, all you're doing is one simple thing: is laying bricks. You're laying on top of another, and all you're looking at is laying the bricks. And you're doing this for 3 weeks. So imagine after 3 weeks that you've probably built something, but you don't know because you're just putting bricks. But someone comes in through that door and looks at it and goes, "Wow, look at that big wall you built." Oh, I did. But that person came in when it was big, but it wasn't ever big. It was just one brick on top of another, right? And so there
Right.
are no big things.
Right.
There's not like this waiting for this big, huge thing to hit me, this big strike of like, hey, now I know what to do. Everything is now fixed. It
Right.
doesn't exist. But how cool is that it doesn't exist?
Yeah.
It
It's
means you
awesome.
got to get focused on the one little thing and then another little thing and just keep on going.
Right.
It's the best. So, Coach, take us home here. What are your takeaways from our awesome time with Erin?
I'm gonna roll off the brick example, just making it possible, right? I picture like a ship leaving a harbor. So the plan. So if we leave the United States, let's say we'll go to England, Coach. We'll go see your home country there.
Very nice.
We have a general idea of where we want to end up, but that plan in the middle, Mother Nature is going to be involved. There's going to be storms, waves. Might have to change our route on the way over. But if we don't have the direction where we're going, we'll blow in the middle of some other ocean on the way out. So just having the general idea of where we want to go and making sure that we can adjust along the way is the secret to getting to England.
The secret to getting to England. That's what we should title that. That's fantastic. How about for you, Erin? What are you taking away?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar, definitely heading in the right direction, but remaining open, open to possibilities, open to what you're going to learn along the way. And I think a big thing too is, even though you're having a plan, like what you learn as you're taking those action steps might change your long-term goal. So I think it's important to remember that it's okay if it changes a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly what you thought at the beginning, because at the beginning you didn't know anything because you didn't have the experience. So I think remaining open to making some changes and shifts is important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. You just got to start. You just got to go. So awesome stuff. Appreciate you coming on today, Erin. A lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff.